This computer. Hi. Hey Joel, how's it going?
Good, Daniel. How you doing?
Good. We're just coming off July 4th weekend, so just getting back into it. But yeah, thanks for jumping on this first series of talking with our legal advisors. So it's been great working with you on Bruce, and I guess just wanted to take this time to just learn more about you and help people just interested in our little video about you and your practice. And also, just because AI is such a central thing to our product and what's going on today in society, your take on as a University of Arizona law professor about AI in general. So that's kind of what's on the docket, so to speak. If you are you okay with that?
Sounds like a plan. Let's dive in.
All right, let's do this. But I guess going back to the beginning, like what got you into law? I guess just from the start, like why did you get into law? And yeah,
Yeah, so I was a bit of a difficult student in school, getting into a lot of trouble, not staying at my desk and stuff. So I get called into the principal's office a lot, and my parents would get called into the principal's office a lot. And in one of those meetings, my dad was explaining to the principal that what I needed was someone to advocate for me. That they were all so quick to want to correct me and punish me, but that they what I needed was someone to speak my side. I didn't know what the word advocate meant at the time. This was all happening in Spanish. I grew up in Colombia, so this was a conversation in Spanish, and the
mhm.
word for advocate is the same word for advocate and same word for lawyer in Spanish. And so when I asked my dad, what does that mean to advocate? And he explained it's when you speak on behalf of someone else who couldn't do as good of a job themselves. Um, I put two and two together that that must be what lawyers do. And I decided, oh, that's cool. I want to do that. And so I was about six when that happened. And from then on, I had just decided I was going to be a lawyer. I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I've never really spoken to any lawyers, but I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I started watching all the
Mhm.
legal content I could get at the time,
Yeah,
TV shows, movies. Got really into it, and I figured I was gonna be pounding on a table in front of a jury because that's what they show you in movies. So I thought that's what being a lawyer was,
yeah,
and
perfection and all that.
it was the path. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a lawyer like in the movies,
Yeah,
and um, I'm happy to say that I've had the chance to have experiences where I really feel like I'm a lawyer in a movie. But the profession is a lot more than that, and it's
yeah,
not nearly glamorous. And so over the last 15 plus years, I've come to learn how naive that was. But I'm also glad that I made that choice so early on because it's been a great career so far.
yeah. It's interesting. So you grew up in Arizona or Colombia, and
Grew up
then
in Colombia.
Colombia. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that you fluent in Spanish as well.
Mhm.
That's very
My parents are Colombian, born and raised there, and they moved to the States when my dad was in grad school.
mm,
Or I should say, my dad started college in the States. Anyway, I was born when my dad was in grad school in New York City. And then we lived in the States until I was five, no, six. I was six and moved to Colombia. My dad wanted to move the family back down to where he was from, and
mm,
that's what we did. And then I lived in Colombia until I was 15. And then we moved back to the States at that point. The country had deteriorated in terms of its
yeah,
economy. It was really bad. I'm happy to say it's improved a lot. I've been back to Colombia a few times since I moved away, and it's very different, much improved country.
yeah,
But yeah, we spoke English at home when we lived in Colombia, so we could keep the English fluent.
yeah.
And then when we moved back to the States, we made it a point to always speak Spanish at home so that we could keep the Spanish going. So now it was a great idea for my parents because now I'm fluent in both languages,
Yeah.
perfectly comfortable switching back and forth.
I'm also fluent in Korean, so it's good that my mom spoke to me in Korean growing up, and then kind of retained that. So
Huge gift she gave you.
for kids are learning as well Spanish.
Awesome. Awesome.
Interesting here. Okay. Um, and so you went to law school, and what made you choose to go into criminal defense or litigation specifically?
Well, they don't do a whole lot of movies about transactional lawyers. So when I was thinking and dreaming of being a lawyer, I only thought of litigation. I didn't, frankly, it wasn't until well into law school that it even dawned on me that there's a type of lawyer that doesn't do litigation.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah.
so
It's just on your mind. Yeah.
It was always on my mind. And my impression, I mean, because I hadn't even have a concept of non-litigation practice, it was never something
Mm.
that I contemplated. So litigation was kind of the path. It was always going to be the path. Criminal came from a similar bent in that I always pictured myself representing people because they don't make a lot of movies about
Yeah.
lawyers entities and corporations. And so if you're going to be representing people, criminal tends to be a good spot for that. But really what happened was in law school, your viewers and listeners might not know this, in law school, at least the upper tier law schools have on-campus recruiting where big law firms from big law will come to do en masse interviews over the course of a few days. Usually it's in the summer right before the new semester begins, between your 1L and 2L year. And so
Mm.
I signed up for a bunch of those interviews and got a bunch of interviews and didn't get any callbacks. So I reached out to the career development office at the law school and I asked them to help me figure out what was going on. We did a mock interview, and at the end of the mock interview, they said, "Well, it's abundantly clear you're just not interested in the kind of work that they do." And I said,
Mm.
"Really?" He says, "Yeah, but you light up when you talk about your criminal law
Yeah.
class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why aren't you pursuing a career in criminal law?" I
Yeah.
told him, "If you're interested in doing that. You guys made me think that I had to be doing this on-campus interviewing thing." He
Mm.
says, "No, there's a whole other path." And so they were the ones who not gave me permission, but sort of alerted me that I should really be pursuing criminal law since that's what I was interested in. And
Mm.
that's what set me on the path. So that would have been my second year of law school. And then I was pursuing criminal law from there on out. And it was like a beeline to that. I chose any choice I had in the classes I took. I favored the criminal law courses.
Mm.
Um, Pretty much every criminal law course that my university had to offer. And then every internship, every externship, every summer job I did in that, and it ended up being in criminal defense in particular,
Mm.
because as much as I appreciate the advice from the career development office that I pursue a career in criminal law, they gave me the worst piece of advice, or
Yeah.
the wrongest piece of advice I've ever gotten, which was that I should really start with the defense side, because as they put it, if I had prosecution experience on my resume, that defense agencies and defense firms would look at me askance and not want to hire me because of that. And so they recommended that I not tarnish my resume with the prosecution stuff before I get my foot in the door on the defense side. And so that's why I started with defense, just to following their
That's
advice.
interesting. Yeah.
And once I got into it, I couldn't go into prosecution. Like I saw too much about the world on that side of things. I could never go into prosecution. And so I was set to do criminal defense from there on out. The irony is, and if I'd known better and I had a better understanding of how things worked, I would have been able to push back and say that doesn't make any sense. That once you have prosecution experience on your resume, you can't go into defense, because that's the only direction of travel from the prosecution. If you are a prosecutor and you want to go into private practice, you got to go into defense, because there's not really private prosecution. So it couldn't be that people who have prosecution on their resumes just cannot go into criminal defense. Like, just doesn't track. So it was just bad advice, but it's the advice that ended up shaping my career.
That's actually interesting because, like, yeah, well, I have a family experience with the criminal justice system. So for me, it's like, I never even crossed my mind to think about this, like, being in a tool for prosecution to use. I mean, we're focused on really helping defense firms and attorneys alike. Um, and so I think I understand where you're coming from with, like, not even considering the prosecution angle. But what I've heard is a lot of people come from prosecution to defense. So I actually didn't know that you were defense from the start. So that's actually,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
anyone who starts their career in prosecution and doesn't end it in prosecution, but does stay in criminal law, is going to end up going to defense. I
right.
mean,
Yeah,
there are some exceptions that can come up with that, but generally speaking, that's the direction of travel in careers.
yeah,
Uh,
can see
it's
why.
far more common to see prosecutors going to defense than to see it go the other way around. And it's been my experience from my local prosecution agencies, hearing from people who try to get jobs and internships there,
Mhm.
that when they have defense work on their resumes, they get grilled about it, and that they feel like they've missed out on opportunities because of the
Opposite.
defense.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting.
if anything, the advice that my career development office gave me when I was in law school should be flipped.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's what I was
gotten
thinking.
it, if
Yeah.
they'd gotten it right, we might not be talking because I might be a prosecutor.
Or maybe like federal defense or somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, or somewhere else.
Interesting. That's a good story to hear. Yeah, that's actually really strong. Um, yeah, and so that's interesting. So I guess I'm curious, like, with criminal justice, it's a very personal thing, and you're working with a lot of clients who are in the worst periods of their life. And I'm curious, like, how do you work with your clients, keep them informed, and how do you factor that into balance with your home life, and how does it affect you personally?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
so the joke I always make when people ask me how do I balance my home life and my work life
yeah.
is it depends who you ask, and if you ask my wife, she'd say not that well. Um,
Okay. Oh,
but I'm getting better. You're catching me on the tail end of a long vacation that I've taken with my family. And before we started recording, you said that I looked more rested, which is
yeah,
good.
yeah.
That was
You do. Yeah,
Take that. And I was feeling like I needed the rest by the last time we spoke. So I'm
yeah.
glad to hear that there's some tangible and visible impact of the vacation I've just taken. But what's that?
Happier.
I
Much
look after. Good. Uh,
happier. Yeah,
I go out of my way. I mean, it's not natural for me to have that balance, for lack of a better word. I have to really work on it, and sometimes I'm more successful than others. But I do I do have a little bit of a sort of a mantra that I repeat to myself every day, usually towards the end of the workday, which is that you're not going to get it all done. There's always going to be more to do. And a colleague, not a coach of mine, a former coach of mine, he's the one who really introduced that to me. He says, look, if your goal is to have everything on your to-do list done by the end of the day, you're always going to fail because there's always going to be more to do. The only day you have nothing left to do on your list is the day you die.
yeah.
And so that's something I really needed to hear when I heard it, and it's reframed things. So now I appreciate that I'm in the long game. Like I expect to have another 30 years of practice in me.
Mhm.
And so that's a long time. And there's a lot of daily to-do lists that are just not going to get done. And so I repeat that to myself. It's not going to get all done. This is a perfectly fine time to stop and leave it for tomorrow and the next day. And so I'm reminding myself of that in terms of the balance. But I also um, strive really hard to um, have dinner with my family. So it's rare that I'm missing dinners with the family. We try to do that almost every day. Um, my wife and I have different weekends. Her weekend is right in the middle of the week on Wednesday, and mine is a regular Saturday, Sunday weekend. And so we don't have a lot of overlap. Regularly, we don't have a lot of overlap. So we have to be very intentional about carving out those times to get together and be together.
Yeah.
Um, we're fortunate that we live nearby to family, and so the family pitches in. My wife's grandparents, who thank goodness are still with us, are very generous. They're often offering to give us date nights, and so we try to get a couple of date nights in a month to have that together time.
Yeah.
Um, a great piece of advice that was given to us was to always strive to carve out at least 15 minutes of quality personal time, my wife and I, where we're not just conducting the business of the household, not just trying to figure out schedules and logistics and things. And so we try to do that. And that could just be talking about our days. It could be watching something on TV together. It could just be snuggling up together. But to have that time carved out each day for us, and that's been very helpful to make it a point to do that. And candidly, I often forget to, and you feel it, you miss it. So that's how I strike the balance, or at least how I try to. The other question you asked me is, what is it like to uh, counsel people when they're in the worst moments of their lives, and
Yeah.
how do I deal with that? How do I take it on? Forgive me if I'm paraphrasing you,
Fine.
and it correctly. I'm sure you'll correct me if you need me to, if you need to.
Mhm.
But let me think my way through this answer. So I knew when I decided to do criminal defense as my career that that's what I was signing up for. Like it was clear to me that I'd be representing people in the worst times of their lives. What I don't think people are usually well prepared for is the um, vicarious trauma that you suffer from representing people in those times, particularly in indigent defense, which is where I started as a public defender, representing people who can't afford to hire a lawyer.
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
when you're representing people in that subset, you're representing people for whom their criminal case might be one of many very big problems that they have in their lives.
Yeah.
Uh, and so
Yeah.
if they don't have the means to hire a lawyer, that kind of poverty tends to follow or have other things follow it.
Right.
Their health is very poor. They don't live in a secure environment. They might be homeless, unhoused.
Hmm.
Substance abuse, substance dependency is a big part of indigent defense. And so you're not only representing a person with a case, you're representing a person whose life is in shambles. And oftentimes, in order to make something positive happen with the case, you got to address some of the other issues. And so you got to get them into counseling, you got to get them into substance abuse treatment, you got to find them stable housing. And that's something that I wasn't really prepared for in public defense, that the
Yeah.
social work aspect of it. And that part is the part that really starts to get to you. Every time I would come home from working at the PD's office, and your kids come and hug you, and you come to your stable house that's got central air conditioning and central heating in the winter, and you got the electricity and the plumbing, and your fridge is full. Uh, it made me very appreciative of all of those things that I had. But you also, the other side of that coin is a sense of guilt. Sort of, it's kind of like survivor's guilt, right?
Yeah.
Because you appreciate how all the people who don't have that. And one of the things I struggled with, particularly at the beginning of my career, was not working on the weekends, not working
I see.
constantly. Because
Right.
I really think about those clients who are sitting in jail,
Mhm.
facing a lot of prison time. And it felt like I was stealing from them. If I wasn't working on trying to get them out of custody or trying to get them to not go to prison, it felt like I was betraying them in some way. And I had to learn that, back to the subject of replenishment and of taking a break and getting some rest, that if you're not, you can only go at that speed for so long before the wheels come off. And
Right.
so um, the cliche, it's a marathon, not a sprint, comes to mind. If you're in it for the long game,
Yeah.
you got to pace yourself. And I do believe that to help as many people as I can is more valuable than to throw all my energy into one person, burn out, and then my career is over. And that's what I would explain to colleagues that I would mentor, that yes, you want to do is the best you can for every client, but you can't do the best you can for every client. There's a limited amount of resources, and you have to allocate them. And so, figuring out how can I give the most of myself to as many people as I can. That
Right.
was the calculus in public defense work, um, and it is hard. There's a reason why people don't tend to last more than a few years. I think the average lifespan for a public defender is somewhere between 2 and 3 years, and that's it.
Wow.
Uh, and that's average, right? So you're gonna have people above that. You're gonna have people who are well below that.
Right.
But I would say that maybe your median lifespan for a public defender is 5 years, maybe.
Wow.
So it's not a long career for most people. And it's because it's a hard balance to strike. And it's something that, frankly, I think warrants counseling. I'm in therapy. It took many years. I wasn't in therapy from the beginning. If I could go back and give myself some advice, it'd be get yourself a therapist and regular therapy, because you need it. You need it because of confidentiality. It's hard to discuss candidly what you're dealing with. Even with my wife, like she knows in general terms what I deal with at work and what I do, but she doesn't know the specifics because of confidentiality and privilege. But I do have a therapist who does have a duty of confidentiality to me. And so I can talk to them about what's going on, the particulars of my cases. And that doesn't come up that often, frankly. But the fact that I have the ability is huge because until you have that outlet, you're just holding it all in.
Yeah.
And you can talk about it with the colleagues in your office, but they're busy too. They got their own stuff going on. So to
Yeah.
have that outlet, to have a place where you can discuss those feelings and those impressions is huge to be able to keep your wits about you. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it being a kind of secondary trauma, just like police officers dealing with
Mhm.
those cases day in and day out. Yeah, it's really tough.
It really is. And then you'll have clients who not only are they terribly poor, but now their children have been taken away.
Mm.
And although the child custody matter is on paper a less serious thing, for them it's not. Like to not to have their children taken away is way more important
Right.
than avoiding the 2 years of prison that I'm trying to keep them from having to serve. And so when you're a public defender, your mandate is the criminal case. You're appointed for the criminal case. You're not appointed for the
Mm.
collateral other things. And so you often have clients who frustrated because their priorities are not aligned with yours, or rather, more importantly, your priorities are not aligned with theirs.
Right.
And so that creates a tension, and that's difficult because it's perfectly reasonable to feel helpless and impotent when they're saying, "Look, I need help with this thing," and you're like, "I'm not allowed to help you with that. Sorry."
Yeah.
And that's hard. Like we generally, anyone who goes into that field goes in because they want to help people. They
Right.
care.
Yeah.
And it's hard for a person who wants to help people and cares to tell the people that they're there to help and they care about, I can't help you with
Right.
that.
Well, this is the best deal to get, and then yeah, yeah,
Right.
tough. Okay. Well, shifting gears a little bit into solo practice, has it been rewarding so far, moving from public defender into solo practice with your own firm?
It really has. It's been a lot better than I actually thought it would be. I didn't think I would. I didn't. I wasn't sure I was going to enjoy it, but I didn't think that if I was going to enjoy it, I was going to enjoy it within the first year of practice. I kind of prepared myself that that first year was going to just be miserable. I was ready to just put my head down and do it and work on it. And frankly, I started enjoying it pretty quickly. I didn't realize how much I was going to like the business management side of things. And although I had no training, no background whatsoever in entrepreneurship, I was very fortunate to be hooked up with that coach I mentioned earlier who told me about not completing all of my to-do lists every day. And so he is a coach to entrepreneurs, and I joined a mastermind that he leads, and I got to meet other entrepreneurs and listen to their struggles and what they're dealing with. And it was eye-opening to hear how a yoga studio owner had the same kinds of problems I had as a
Yeah.
solo criminal defense practice. Um, and it got me to really think about how it's a service industry, and um, and I love it. I love figuring out how to get people to appreciate what it is that I can do for them,
Mm.
um, and how to get the word out. And also there's a an affirmation of having someone say, yes, you're the person I want representing me. I'm going to have you do it.
Right.
I get a lot of juice out of that. I get a lot of fulfillment out of that. And then being able to deliver on that promise that they recognized and have them be satisfied. And then to get the acknowledgement through things such as Google reviews and referrals and repeat business. Although the repeat business I don't love to see as much because that usually means that they got in trouble again. But that they to have people coming back is a kind of affirmation and acknowledgement that you don't have at the PD's office because part of the attraction of the PD's office is they're going to be your clients whether they like it or not. And so you
Right.
get to focus just on the practice. You don't have to worry on the marketing and all that stuff. That was one of the big draws for me is like I can just focus on being a lawyer, sign me up.
Yeah.
It turns out I really like the other aspects of quite a bit. So it's been very fulfilling in that way. And also back to what we're talking about in terms of the indigent clientele, where their criminal case tends to be one of many huge problems that they have. In
Yeah.
private practice, it's less so. In private practice, usually the case you're representing them on, that's the biggest problem they have. That's the thing that they're most focused on. Or more importantly, because they've hired you for that, the boundaries are a lot easier to draw. And
Right.
so they're not often bringing up to you all that other stuff that's going on. First of all, because they're not homeless, they're not without medical care. They don't have the substance abuse problems that I was seeing constantly in indigent defense. Mental illness is another thing that is rampant in the poor community and on the criminal side of things, like just tons
Yeah.
of mental illness in criminal law.
Comorbidity.
But it's usually it's the indigent people. The people who have money and are mentally ill are in situations where they're avoiding police interaction. They're not getting prosecuted for things like, and not always, of course, not 100%, but generally you see a lot fewer clients suffering from severe mental illness in private practice, which is another source of vicarious kind
Right.
of lightened or lessened.
Hmm.
Um, So I've been enjoying that part of it too. My clients, I no longer have to persuade my clients to care about their case at least as much as I do,
They
which is
found
not
right. Yeah.
wasn't the case in indigent defense. So I've been enjoying that aspect of it too. Although I'm proud to say I always carried myself as a professional and always treated my clients professionally, and I don't feel like I've done a whole lot differently with any given case in terms of how I approach it. The difference is how my clients approach me and the kinds of clients that I get. And frankly, that's the reason I made the move in the first place. I was tired of all of those negatives that I've laid out from indigent defense, and I was looking to have a change. And I'm happy to say that moving to private practice has given me that change that I wanted.
It's great to hear. And I do agree with you that every business has the same mindset where it's like a service business. And I realize whether you're a CEO of like of Coca-Cola or a solo attorney or tech startup, the main tenet is like you're gonna drop what you can and at any time to help your clients, right? So definitely resonate with that.
Yeah,
And I know we're going on time, so I won't take up too much of your time on your vacation. But
appreciate it. No worries.
curious, like, yeah, I mean, with AI being around, what percent of attorneys do you think are actually using AI?
Oh, well, assuming you're asking me to pull a number out of my butt, which is what I'm going to do,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
it's kind of like asking, do you think you're an above average or below average driver? And you end up getting like 70% people saying that they're above average, which is impossible. It might be even higher than that, actually. I, based on the conversations I've had,
yeah.
based on the chatter I've seen on LinkedIn and other similar platforms, and I was just at a workshop with a bunch of law firm owners about how to grow their practices. There's a lot of discussion of AI. I think that I would be shocked at how low the number actually is. I want to guess it's about 30% of lawyers are really leaning into AI.
Hmm.
And I don't know how accurate that estimate is. But if someone asked me, do you think the reality is above or below your estimate? I would say it's probably below. I would be
Yeah,
shocked if more than a third of lawyers are actually embracing AI
yeah.
based on all of those things I just said. I am very much trying to be an AI embracing practice and lawyer. I'll always remember September 2022. I remember seeing something about a playground that OpenAI put out that
Hmm.
you
Yeah, yeah,
get in, and they just said, just try anything you want. They just put a chatbot out, and I heard about it, and I went and I asked it to rewrite lose yourself in iambic pentameter in the sound of William and the voice of William Shakespeare. And it spit it out in seconds. And I was blown away. I was like,
yeah. I
this
remember that
is
too.
huge.
That kind
And then I was just looking for other ways to use the sandbox or whatever it is they called it back then. And
yeah.
then as OpenAI started rolling out different models and different services, and then suddenly there was this boom of other AI enabled tools that were coming out, and every time I hear about one, I want to go and check it out, and I'm always on the hunt for the next thing that's going to make me meaner, leaner.
Hmm.
So at this point, I think what I'm most reliant on is ChatGPT and its various models. I also use Claude for some things. LexisNexis, my legal research platform, offers an AI
Hmm.
tool that I use. to some extent as well. For my videos that I put up on YouTube, I use Opus Clip to do shorts off of my long form. I use and then there's a lot of hidden AI. There's stuff that you don't even realize is AI is working in the background. So like I was introduced to the fact that Google Suite now
Yeah,
with Gemini, it can do all kinds of really cool things. And so I started using that more recently. And so that's been really good. And then of course there's Bruce that I'm now leaning into.
craziness. Yeah. And I guess that's really, yeah, I've been using Gemini, a whole bunch of other stuff too. So I think we're really in the golden age of AI. Um, but I guess last question for you. What made you advise us and work with us specifically? And where do you see the future of AI and law going?
Well,
Something like that.
I I appreciated you guys reaching out and just saying, "Hey, we've got this thing, this Bruce AI. We'd love for you to try it out. Give us your thoughts." And as you heard, I love trying AI stuff, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mind talking about AI stuff. I can talk about AI stuff for hours and hours. And so you want me to try something out and tell you what I think? Yeah, let's do it. And so I started trying Bruce out. I was impressed. I thought this is something that I could see really taking off. I didn't realize you guys were looking for an advisor for your advisory board at the time. So I just saw it as sure, I'll try another tool and give you my impressions.
Yeah.
And then you invited me to be an advisor, and I've enjoyed talking to you. One of the things, because in this journey of exploring AI, I've met with other companies who are offering tools and trying to get them to make the tools that I want. I had
Right.
one meeting in particular that it was a couple of meetings, one company where I met with one guy, talked about wine. He says, these are really good ideas. Do you mind if we do another meeting where we get the CEO and the CTO and a bunch of other people on? So then we got another call, which was like nine, it was like a Brady Bunch opening the squares on the Zoom. And we talked and talked. It was about an hour. And they all got really excited and said, okay, well, we'll talk. We'll get back to you. And a few weeks later, I was like, yeah, it's outside of our capabilities to do what you're talking about. So the technology is not just, it's just not there yet. And that was the end of that. It's like, okay. But then we had a similar conversation, you and I, Daniel,
Mhm.
and your approach was very different. Like, I think we can do that. I think we can do that. I think we can do that too. And I got excited and said, would you? And then I think it was around then that you invited me to collaborate to help build this thing. And I thought, yes, let's do that. And so it was both your confidence and your abilities to get the product working the way it needs to. Um, your listening in terms of what my needs are and what I'm looking for, which felt aligned. Um, and also your dependability. I mean, you have been excellent at keeping our biweekly meetings happening on a regular schedule, and they're always really productive meetings. And so, um, well, I think we only recently formalized the advisory relationship. So we've had, I've lost count, maybe 4 or 5 meetings before we actually did that.
Yeah.
And in those meetings, you've shown a tremendous level of professionalism and diligence and follow through
Thank you.
that made it easy for me to say, yeah, I want to hitch my wagon to this convoy.
Thank you so much. Well, yeah, this was a I think a long talk coming from a July 4th weekend, but really appreciate your time and I think most importantly for me it was great to hear your story as an advisor to us and wherever we're headed. I think learning about your story, actually helped me solidify in my mind that it made the right decision having us on our advisory board. So really appreciate that and looking forward to a long relationship and getting into all this AI stuff together. So we'll figure it out.
I'm looking forward to the future, Daniel. It's gonna be great.
Sounds good. Thanks, Joel.